a remote village in the middle of nowhere in central China. Now, why would I mention a Chinese village on a channel that is dedicated to Roman history? Well, this is not a village like any other, because the people living in that village look strangely European. Many of them have facial features that are unmistakably Western, with blue eyes, or fair hair, or a combination of such features, and those people fascinatingly claim to be descendants of Romans. But how could people living in this village claim to be descendants of Romans from the Roman Empire, which existed thousands of kilometers away in the far west from where they lived? Well, the fascinating story of these Chinese villagers, who are proud of their supposed Roman ancestry, is certainly fascinating and worth investigating. It is the year 53 BC. Marcus Licinius Crassus has convinced the Senate of Rome to let him assemble a massive army with which he wants to defeat the Parthian Empire, this massive empire on the eastern borders of the growing Roman Republic. Crassus, by that time already the richest man of Rome, thinks that defeating the Parthian Empire would not only make him even richer, but also cement him as one of the great generals of the Roman Republic, right up there with Julius Caesar and Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus. So he marches with 7 whole legions, a force of around 40,000 men, into the far east to meet the forces of the Persian king Orodes II. But he sent one of his great generals to meet Crassus, and so the two armies clashed at Carrhae in 53 BC. Now the Romans thought that this would be an easy victory. Not only did they have the numerical advantage by an astounding 4-1, but they had the disciplined Roman legions who had won many victories and subjugated many different tribes and kingdoms. Here at Carrhae, the Romans suffered a brutal and humiliating defeat against only 10,000 Persians. The legions were unprepared to meet such a disciplined force of excellent horse archers and heavy cataphracts, and so their numerical advantage did not help them at all. 20,000 Romans lost their lives, 10,000 fled, and 10,000 were captured. Crassus lost his life soon thereafter in failed negotiations that turned violent, and the rest is history. This was the first of many great battles between the Romans and the Persians, none of which were decisive for any side, but which ultimately would destroy both empires 700 years later. But what does this have anything to do with supposed descendants of Romans living in a remote village in China? Well, 10,000 of the Romans from Crassus's army were taken captive, a staggeringly high number. According to some accounts, they were then relocated to the eastern border of the Parthian Empire, which makes sense since the Parthians wanted to force those Romans to fight for them, and so it would have been wise to send them away as far as possible into the Far East, hoping that they would forget Rome and that they would get accustomed to their new lives as mercenaries for the Parthian king. It is believed that they were sent to what is now modern-day Turkmenistan. There, they should fight the eastern barbarian tribes which threatened the far eastern borders of the Parthian Empire, and among them were already the precursors of the Huns, which would plague the Romans hundreds of years later as well. Now fast forward to 17 years later. In 36 BC, on the western border of the Han Chinese Empire, the Battle of Jiji was fought between the Chinese and the Xiongnu, which were the precursors of the Huns. And that would be nothing out of the ordinary, since the Chinese oftentimes fought against the Xiongnu in those times. But in this battle, the Chinese annals recorded mercenaries fighting on the side of the Xiongnu, who used a fish scale formation. The Chinese ultimately won the battle, but they were utterly impressed by the fish scale formation, and so they invited the strange surviving soldiers who used that formation to come with them to China. According to legend, many of these strange fighters accepted the offer and went with the Chinese far into their empire, where they then settled. And the name of the place where they supposedly settled was Lijian, a name that sounds strangely similar to the word legion. Now, according to proponents of this theory, the strange soldiers using the fish scale formation were actually the surviving legionaries of the Battle of Carrhae, who had switched sides from the Parthians to the Xiongnu, helping them fight against the hated Parthian Persians, who were responsible for the situation they were in. It is logical that they would prefer helping the Xiongnu than fighting for the Parthian Empire, the very Parthians who had defeated them at Karhai. If true, the fish-scale formation that had been described by Chinese chroniclers would then have been nothing else than the Testudo formation that we all know, this closed battle formation of the disciplined legions that would protect against incoming showers of arrows. This idea was first suggested by the historian Homer Dobbs. Dobbs argued that some of the soldiers in exile gave up trying to go back to Rome and hired themselves out as mercenaries for local warlords in the region. Some of these former Roman soldiers may have found themselves working for the Xiongnu in their war against the Chinese. Supporters of this theory have actively sought out Lijian and are convinced that they've pinpointed its location. Zhelaijai, a small village in the middle of China, is especially fascinating due to its inhabitants exhibiting distinctive features like fair hair and blue eyes, in stark contrast to the appearance of other Chinese people in the area. Moreover, a helmet was supposedly dug up bearing Chinese characters that translated to "one of the surrendered." Then there are other intriguing artifacts: a water pot styled akin to a Roman design and a wooden trunk featuring stakes reminiscent of those employed by Romans for fort constructions were also found. The distinct appearance of Zhelaijai's residence and the unearthing of these curious relics have caused many proponents of the Lost Roman Legion theory to link Zhelaijai village with Lijian. Capitalizing on the legend's popularity, the village has embraced it as a means to attract visitors, even undertaking the construction of Roman-style buildings and even statues. The name of the village was even changed from Zhelaijai to Lijian village. So then, is this definite proof that the villagers of modern-day Lijian village are indeed descended from the Romans of Karhai? But before we get to that, if you are like me, a total Rome nerd, or Romaboo as some people like to say, and I think that you are, or else you probably wouldn't be watching this video, then you might be interested in the incredible rings and other Roman accessories which the SPQR Shop is building. They make legionary rings, they make rings with different themes, they even make coin replicas, statues, pendants, attributes and terracottas. And the most incredible thing is that they handcraft every single piece. That's right, this is really high quality handcrafted material. There's really no better present for yourself or someone you know who might be a Rome fan. I put the link to their shop in the video description and into the pinned comment, and with this link you can now even get a 20% rebate for every purchase. I repeat, a 20% price reduction for every purchase from the SPQR Shop, which is just an absolutely insane offer, and you can only get it here via the Maiorianus link, because let me tell you, the people from SPQR Shop also are absolute fans of the heroic Emperor Maiorian. So go and check out their incredible assortment. There will be certainly also something for you. So back to the supposed Chinese Romans. This fascinating theory has understandably caught the attention of both Chinese and Western scientists. A genetic study by the University of Lanzhou indeed revealed connections between the town's inhabitants and Europe, thus enhancing the credibility of the theory. However, it is worth noting that the town sits along the ancient Silk Road, thus making links with Western populations quite common, regardless of whether they were Roman or not. Now naturally, of course, skepticism persists among many scholars regarding the viability of this theory. While it is very thinkable that a cohort of Roman mercenaries ventured deep into China, the vast distance certainly must have posed a big challenge. And despite circumstantial indications, there is a lack of real conclusive evidence pinpointing to a larger Roman presence in Lijian in the past. The Roman-style pottery might have been acquired through trade, and the other artifacts don't exclusively denote a Roman origin. Also, no other Roman artifacts have been found, no coins, no leftover Roman armor, or anything of the sort. Moreover, the physical features and genetic affinities of the villagers don't require direct descent from Mediterranean lineages, because various Central Asian ethnic groups share similar genetic links and physical traits. Even if a European or Mediterranean lineage is established, it doesn't necessarily prove a direct descent from a lost Roman legion. especially given the town's proximity to the old Silk Road, which greatly facilitated intermarriage with distant travelers from Europe over the centuries. And please consider supporting this channel via Patreon or YouTube membership, because I really need your help in order to be able to continue this work on late Roman history. Without your support, I don't know how much longer I can continue this channel, because as you can imagine, the YouTube algorithm does not exactly push a niche topic such as late Roman history. Alternatively, you can help this channel by buying my merch directly here on YouTube. I have created a merch store with some cool or funny or weird late Roman merch, which you can buy directly here via YouTube in the video description. Thank you very much. These challenges don't necessarily invalidate the theory, but leave it unverified. Another aspect is the probable disconnect between the name Li Qian and the word legion. Of course, it doesn't make any sense that Li Qian would resemble the English word legion in the first place. Also, Chinese scholars delving into the name's etymology found a link to the state of Li Xuan, which is associated with Ptolemaic Egypt rather than Rome. So if a connection to the Western Mediterranean world exists, it's more likely Greek than Roman, according to this perspective. In antiquity, Rome and China were aware of each other, and travel between the two empires was feasible along the Silk Road, bolstering the plausibility of the theory. So it remains possible that a Roman legion did reach China, though the evidence lacks conclusiveness. The genetic discoveries could alternatively imply descent from a local Caucasian population, with no definitive archaeological proof of a Roman presence in the town during ancient times. A 2007 genetic study, for instance, could not show a definitive proof of a Roman ancestry, but more of a partially European genetic heritage. These counter-arguments don't completely rule out the potential arrival of a lost Roman legion in China, but they make it unlikely. However, we can of course imagine that from 10,000 captured Roman soldiers, maybe a few indeed did arrive through some wild travels to China. But the notion that thousands of them arrived all together in a village where they then settled and stayed for good is a very romantic and fascinating, albeit unrealistic one. And since extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, in the case of the lost legion of Carrhae, the conclusive evidence simply isn't there. So it might be partially true, or some of the legionaries might have arrived at some point in China, but we cannot prove it. And hence, it remains a fascinating idea of a link between two great empires, where people live in China nowadays who see themselves as descendants of Romans. This in itself already is to me an amazing thing. And please like and subscribe so that you won't miss any future videos on the fascinating era of the late Roman Empire. And please consider supporting my work on Patreon or via a YouTube membership, because the long-term sustainability of this channel really depends on your support. And I would especially like to thank our new Augustus members, Howard Quinn and Linda Thatcher. Thank you so much, Howard Quinn and Linda Thatcher, for your generous support. It is thanks to amazing people like you that this channel is made possible. And I would also like to thank our new Caesar supporter, Dimitrios Godosis. Thank you so much, Dimitrios Godosis, for supporting this channel in such a generous way. It is really thanks to amazing supporters like you that this channel is made possible. And I want to thank each and everyone who is supporting this channel in any form. Gratias tibiago, amici. And if you want to learn more about late Roman legionaries, you can watch this video here in the upper right corner. But if you want to learn more about why the Testudo formation was given up by the legions at some point, you can watch the other video in the lower right corner. I say thanks again to all friends of Roman history, gratias tibiago and bene valete.